قیام سراسری مردم ایران. کنفرانس در دوبلین با شرکت اعضای سنا و پارلمان ایرلند و سخنرانی خانم مریم رجبی.
سخنرانی سناتورها جری هورکان، جو اورایلی، ند اوسولیوان، شارون کیگان، بری وارد. نمایندگان آلن دیلون، جیم هیگینز، جان پری، ماریان هارکین. جیم هیگینز، معاون سابق پارلمان اروپا: ما در مورد بازگشت به دوران شاه یا رفرم در رژیم آخوندها صحبت نمی کنیم. قسمت آخر.
I really regret what's happening there, but I very much support those who are standing up for their rights to freedom of expression and to challenge laws that they feel are unjust. And I feel this is a very important issue for Irish politicians to occupy a strong position on and have a strong line on, because we would never tolerate something like what is happening in Iran happening here in Ireland. And what we're seeing in Iran is illegal. It is against international law. It is against human rights law. As it is the responsibility of democratic politicians around the world to make sure that they are very clear that they cannot tolerate this kind of behaviour and what I consider to be totally illegal and unlawful behaviour in the context of international human rights law.
Delighted to be here in solidarity with the men, women and children of Iran and the challenges that she currently face over the past 50 days. And the fearlessness that you have shown has to be commended. And certainly we support every legitimacy for human rights violations, for the brutality and for the massacre of people. You mentioned a figure of over 120,000 people that have lost their lives due to no fault of their own. And certainly we search for freedom on your behalf, and whatever we can do within our own party, within Fine Gael, certainly it has been raised at parliamentary party level by various TDs and senators at the highest level within the Irish government in terms of the atrocities that are happening on your streets. And what we want to see is interventions both at an EU level and at a global level. And we will do everything we can in order to raise the profile in relation to addressing this issue. Thank you.
When we elected our first female president, Mary Robinson made a very, very deep-sounding, meaningful statement to the Irish people at her inauguration. She said, the hand that rules the world rocks the cradle. And in your leadership, you have given us such inspiration to keep the fight going. The fight going in terms of our parliamentary input, but the fight going in relation to what's happening on the streets. Because I think what's different with this uprising is that this uprising is right throughout the length and breadth of Iran. It's in every town, it's in every city. And you have segments of society that never took to the streets before, teachers, public servants, etc. And they have all defied the powers that be in terms of suppression. The figures you have given speak for themselves. That while there were uprisings and they were suppressed, they all died down. But this uprising is not going to die down. Now is the moment of truth. We're at a crossroads. And one of the things we've got to do is to see that the 2015 agreement is nothing other than a sham. That's the JCPOA. That's the international agreement in relation to, which was signed in Vienna in July 2015 in relation to nuclear disarmament and to control the whole issue of nuclear power. That has to be shredded and torn up. It's absolutely meaningless. It is very important that we flex our muscles and use the power and the clout that we have. Secondly, as members of the Security Council, and we have one of those precious seats on the Security Council, that again, we use our power, our muscle, and our commitment to human rights to to make sure that we push this particular thing over the line once and for all. one of the things we've got to realise is this is not, as you said yourself, I think you hinted, it's not just about the hijab. It's about a lot more than the hijab. It's about fundamental human rights. It's about democracy. It's about people on the street having the right to protest. And it's about putting in place, not the regime that was there pre-1979. We're not talking about going back to the days of the Shah. Or we're not talking about the retention of any watered-down moderation of the mullahs.
I'm very impressed by the words of my great friend and colleague, Jim Higgins, who's a very experienced parliamentarian and not patronising or talking nonsense. I think it would be concorded around this table. He would be probably one of the greatest intellects and one of the finest people to have come into parliamentary life in Ireland. But we were the victims of oppression and consistent oppression. And we did have, as Jim says, numerous uprisings. And I think the point that Jim is making then there is that you should remain hopeful. But I am seriously impressed by your resilience as a group, by your constant optimism, and by your willingness to keep going. I think what's happening in Iran now has a number of unique qualities. As Jim said, it's reflective of many strands of society. It has broadened in its base, the protest. But also, it's gone on consistently for a huge number of days in the face of extraordinary opposition and in the face of draconian clampdowns. So it's the fact that the protests are lasting, that they're actually growing in numbers, and that they're remaining consistent in the face of oppression speaks its own language. So basically, I'm very happy to be here and to join colleagues, and in any way that we can assist, we will. Thank you.
I'm so glad to be here to talk to Madam Rajavi, and I admire you greatly. And I think you're a formidable, able woman, and it will give me great joy to see you elected as the first democratically elected president of Iran. And hopefully, in prospect, we welcome that day. I'm not an expert on foreign affairs, or particularly the Middle East theatre. But I have to say that I have one abiding principle, is that I would never support any country or any organisation that would not treat women as equals with respect. And that's why I find this rising particularly exciting, because it is women-driven. And former MEP Higgins referred there to our own fight for freedom. And we had lots of struggles, but it's extraordinary when we finally succeeded. It was because we had recruited the women. I'll be leaving here to go straight to our parliamentary party meeting of all the party with the Taoiseach. And I'm certainly going to bring forward a message there. And I'm going to find out what the government will do and can do to help you in every way we can.
I think it is so important, and it is so important that we have this engagement. We have in the past, as Kاترین alluded to, been and met you in Paris and indeed in Albania, and seen the great work that your organisation is doing to highlight the inequity that exists in Iran and the regime for all of its awfulness in a way that I have to say, before I was a member of Parliament, I didn't appreciate how the regime worked in Iran as much as I do now. And I think we all know that there's very strong words from Jim Higgins, from Kاترین herself, from Joe O'Reilly, and from more recently from Ned. It's absolutely frightening to think that in this day and age, in such a short period of time, people have been killed in such numbers, arrested in such numbers. And of course, we all remember that what happened in 1988 in terms of the huge massacre of political prisoners back then, the 30,000 killed at the time. You know, I think back in 2016, 2017, 2018, when you were having your gatherings, we didn't anticipate that people would be trying to blow up those gatherings and that they would end up being arrested and charged and proven guilty of terrorist charges. But it shows how much they fear your regime and how much they fear freedom of speech and democracy from what they have in their theocracy that's there at the moment. But I don't think any of us would have anticipated back in 2018 or 2019 the level of activity and the amount of conversation we're all now having about what's happening in Iran. We talked about maybe regime change would happen and would happen soon, but what we're seeing now is a much greater level of, finally, particularly the women and the young people, but the whole nation is rising up against the regime, against their treatment by this oppressive regime, and wants to see an opportunity for democracy. And wouldn't it be wonderful to see a country like Iran that is so oppressive to women, to have a woman leader, a woman president, I think would send a signal to the world of how different it might be in the future as to how it is currently. And we certainly call on our own government to stand with the people of Iran and to look at the fact that the UN Security Council, as much as the UN Human Rights Council, needs to be involved and needs to be talking about these issues. So I think we do need to consider our level of diplomatic relations with Iran, both in terms of what they have here and what we're contemplating having in Tehran. I think we do need to reflect on that and to let the regime know that we are not in any way happy with how they're conducting their affairs in their country, and it is not okay to be arresting thousands and thousands of prisoners and indeed imprisoning and killing people, murdering people for showing resistance to the current regime. Your own 10-point plan for democracy is well known, and we've certainly talked about it before, but I think it is the template for what should be the future for Iran, and I think all of my colleagues stand with you, as I do, in your fight for a free Iran.
There should be no hesitation in coming out condemning what is currently taking place. When you look at I've seen on the live on YouTube feed the massive protests that's taking place in Iran at the moment. The huge cruelty, and even that uprising in the recent jail. The amount of people who lost their lives there. But I think that's the time for the recognition of the 10-point plan. I think that the 10-point plan is very good. What's required is a free, democratic Iran. But it's amazing I saw where President Raisi got it, even though despite your best objections, he was allowed into America, which he is, to be honest, a criminal really for involved in the 98 massacre, which really, to a fair degree, has been recognised outside of Iran. And I sincerely hope that the uprising will continue, that we will see freedom for the 80 million Iranian people.
Good evening. I've been watching very closely what is happening in Iran. It pains me to see what the Iranian women are going through at this moment in time. So in light of what is going on, I would really want my colleagues to basically pause that. That has to be paused in light of what is happening there within Iran at this moment in time. I don't think that we should sit quietly by and reopen our embassy there while the people of Iran are suffering under this regime. Our influence with regard to technology companies, we host and home some of the largest technology companies in the world, Facebook and Google and Twitter. So we should be able to play a role there as well with regard to making sure that you have unfettered and cost-free access to the internet and communications to the Iranian people. So that should be something that we can do. So I want to wish you good luck in your efforts for your 10-point plan and for promoting peace and democracy within Iran. And anything that I can do here for the Iranian people and for the Iranian women, I will certainly lend my voice to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And first of all, thank you for the meeting. And it's great to see you again, Madame Rajavi. I've met you many times in the European Parliament, along with my colleague Jim Higgins here. And I wish you well, and I wish the Iranian people well with all my heart.